Hi, my name is Jonathan Bundy from Penn State University, and today I'd like to share some thoughts on being a developmental reviewer at AMR. When I think about reviewing developmentally, I like to simplify it into two basic statements. First, as a reviewer at AMR, I think it's easy to get caught up in what I call the whatabouts. The whatabouts happen when you're reviewing a paper and you start thinking something like the following. What about an alternative construct? I wonder if it fits in the story. Or, what about this other theory? I wonder if it should be used instead or integrated somehow. Or, what about another context? I wonder if this theory holds there. The whatabouts happen because of pretty classic manuscript issues, including unclear assumptions, inadequate identification of boundary conditions, confusing argumentation, and lack of concise and thorough definitions. As an author at AMR, I can tell you from experience that these mistakes are easy to make, particularly when dealing only with theory and not having data or a sample to help constrain and define the study. Because of this, as an author, I've always found these what about type questions very helpful in terms of guiding the theory in new directions and building the contribution, often to include a wider audience. As a reviewer, I have also seen authors use what about questions from me and others to make their papers stronger and more interesting. As such, the whatabouts can be critical to the success of a manuscript, and they serve an important developmental role. However, as an author and a reviewer, I've also seen how what about questions can be frustrating and confusing. With theory papers, we have an opportunity to explore organizational relationships without being constrained by data availability. But theories still need to be bounded. As a mentor of mine always says, you can't do everything in 40 pages. So it can be a difficult and confusing task for authors to consider all the possible what about questions. Thus, anytime I raise a what about question, I always try to pair it with a how about suggestion. For example, if I raise the concern, what about an alternative construct? How does it fit into your theory? I always try to follow up with a how about suggestion, something like, how about you consider it as a moderator, or as an antecedent, or some kind of constituent dimension to your construct. If possible, I always try to pair it with references to the relevant literature. In providing how about suggestion, I am attempting to give the authors a pathway to addressing my what about concern. Sometimes I'm quite committed to this how about suggestion, and I believe it is necessary for the success of the manuscript. If that is the case, I try to say so explicitly, and I try to be more detailed with my suggestion. However, I have often found that it's just one suggestion of many, and I'm open to the authors exploring alternative how about options. I also try to make this explicit, and in many cases my suggestion is rather generic, meant to serve as a guide rather than as an absolute solution. If I have several what about questions, I try to tie them together with my how about suggestion. And finally, perhaps most importantly, if I have a what about question but I can't come up with a how about suggestion, then I often think twice about including my comment in the review. In the end, while I'm not trying to write the paper for the authors and I want them to have freedom to maintain their own story, I'm trying to help guide them in a way that could satisfy my concern. As an author, I've found that it can be frustrating to get a bunch of what about questions with no how about suggestions. However, I've also found how about suggestions from reviewers to be one of the most rewarding parts of authorship at AMR. So, when I think about reviewing developmentally, I think about the what about questions and the how about suggestions. I found this simple heuristic helps me to be a better reviewer, and I hope that it helps you. Thanks.